Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
And I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about Star Trek Nemesis, not the autobiography of Cisco just yet. But before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct. And as I say every single week, you should find us and follow us because we're great. We're awesome. We're a good time. And this is the first show of the new year.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to try to, give you a lot for those of you who may be joining us for the first time. And for those of you who have, tuned in from time to time, hopefully it's still things that you will enjoy. But yes, as David said, we have decided to flip things a little bit. And instead of bookending Deep Space Nine totally with the autobiography of Ben Sisko, we are going to talk about the movie Nemesis first. Then next week we will hit the autobiography, and then we'll move on to some other stuff from there. So,
And it's my
um,
fault. I just didn't have the book with me today. It's not that we just changed the world up or anything. I just didn't have the book with me. So
and it's all right because it actually, it gave me some time to get into reviewing stuff for this movie a little bit earlier than I had anticipated, which um, I really enjoyed doing. I enjoyed it far more than I thought I was going to. So
Oh,
I was
okay.
eager to start our conversation once I started doing that. So yeah. Now before we dive right into the movie, we like to, of course, give ourselves a little weekly check-in. So David, how has your new year been?
New Year's fine. It's a curious time for me because literally tomorrow is the last day at the store that I'm working. I have been working for the last 2 months, and that means I have to move on to something else. And I don't think I told you yet, but I contacted our mutual friend over at the mattress
Mhm.
firm and said, "Hey, I'm ready to come back if you guys will have me." And he sent me a link, so we're just waiting to hear back at this point. Hopefully that works out. Didn't expect that to be what I was going to be doing, but that's where I'm at the moment. So that's that. In the meantime, watched the finale of Stranger Things. I liked it. There was kind of a mixed reaction online. Some people, I mean, like the finale is 2 hours long. Like it's a very long finale. They definitely
Mhm.
indulged themselves quite a bit. A lot of talk about how kind of bloated the cast is. So you like, if you're nitpicking, you're noticing that they're like having to kind of force certain characters to give them something to do, which is fine. I didn't expect anything less than that. They did make a smart decision at the end about how to kind of wrap things up. I think I actually, I'll say this. I liked the ending.
Okay.
People online had some mixed reactions. I liked it. I thought it was great. I thought it resolved things properly. There are definitely some questions to ask. Like, for example, I'll just say this. In the first half of the season, there's a lot of Demogorgon action, and then the last half of the season, including the final episode, the Demogorgons are just gone. Like they've been a threat, and suddenly they're just not even in existence. So, like,
Okay.
are they a threat or are they not a threat? So that's a complaint. You could complain about that. I think there's an explanation that you could give for why that's happening, but the show doesn't give it. So they made a mistake in not giving us a reason. But I could come up with one just on the fly. I could go with two reasons even. But they didn't actually happen in the show. So that was a good finale in my opinion. And then I finished reading the book, which is called Taliesin, which is the first book of the Pendragon cycle, which is what the TV show The Rise of Merlin on the Daily Wire is about. And I thought it was okay. The first two episodes of the show were basically the book. So by the fact that I've already watched the first episode of the show meant I knew the book. And basically the first 2/3 of the book are very briefly have some scenes kind of picked out and then put in, and then the majority of it focuses on the last third of the book. And it suffers from the problem that I'll call the South Park writing problem, which is not a problem as much as that Matt Stone and Trey Parker have said how they basically write their stories. If you have a story, it should have therefore moments and but moments. So like this action happens, therefore this happens, or but this happens to bring conflict. And if your story ever has and then as its storytelling device, this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. And that's basically how this book felt. It felt like a bunch of and thens. It did not do a very good job of therefores. There was not a lot of driving momentum in the storytelling, which was also evident in the show, I would say. So,
I'd always heard that put as um, evolutionary storytelling versus factual storytelling.
yeah,
Which and then this happened, and then this happened. That is factual storytelling.
right.
This moment, this moment then follows this one, follows this one, follows this one, versus evolutionary storytelling where you have an event and then there are things that because of decisions that are made from that, the story progresses based off of those things. It's not so much factual as it is you're taking into individual perspective, how that moment in particular would affect your main character, but it might not affect the secondary character the same way. So you have these driving conflicts because our perspectives are different, therefore their experience of the situation is different. So it's going to evolve from
Yeah,
varied perspectives. They kind of do that more in like the Expanse series when because we have multiple characters that
right,
are all dealing with the same thing, but they're handling it in different ways because they are different people. They have different
right.
perspectives, so forth and so
Yeah.
on. So
But
yeah,
James does this, therefore this. But
right,
Naomi does this, therefore this. Yeah,
right,
the Expanse is a great example. But for example, this book, the two main, there's a main male character, there's a main female character. They fall in love, which again feels very and then-ish, which an example of it is like he proposes to her pretty early on, I would say. I feel like they just it's like they meet and then he's immediately like, we should get married. And she's like, I don't know. And that basically what happens is she goes home and she's kind of sad about not being sure about it. And then literally it's basically, and then the next day she's kind of over being sad about it and
yeah.
then decides it's okay to marry him. And it's like
It's
that.
kind of like how we were taught history in school. You
Yeah.
had this event that happened in 1776, and then this one was in 1812, and then this one wasn't. And so there's no sitting with the decision. There's no seeing how different people moved from one event to the next. And I always appreciated I had a history teacher that did, it was like really big on pointing out the time frame of a lot of things. Like, yeah, this happened in 1776 and this happened in 1798. Like, recognize that there are several years there where there were people who were having to live with these decisions and trying to figure out the best way to move forward. And there are plenty of reversals and there are plenty of things that didn't go well, and that led to something else. And so we take it for granted because we just see it on this, you know, timeline, but there are a lot of things there that were
Yeah.
going on in between each of those events that you know and so when you get into your writing, you really want to watch out for that because it can make your story boring because everything reads like an inevitability
Yes.
and there's no reason to continue to read it at that point.
Right.
So yeah, I understand what you're saying there, and that's why I think, like, again, The Expanse is such a great example of the evolutionary storytelling because, as you said, like, we've got characters like Holden does one thing, but then Naomi does something else. They're both dealing with the same event, they're handling it differently. And then you have Amos who does something completely different. But then also, because of the way they carried out their actions, their interactions are going to be different and
Right.
cause their own little mini conflicts. Like when they find out about Naomi giving the protomolecule to Fred Johnson, and no one that was in on that, but that was a decision she made. These little conflicts that then feed and keep the story moving because now you have, again, it's evolving from the moment and how
Yeah.
is the next thing going to propel them to whatever's next. So
And
yeah,
to be very clear, the reason all this matters is because in this book, there was no real conflict. This whole book, 500 pages, I'm not kidding. There was no serious conflict at all. The biggest
see,
conflict is literally when she tells her dad, "I want to marry. I'm agreed to marry this guy," and he's like, "But I don't want you to." It's like, okay,
too bad.
why? And he's
Yeah,
like,
right.
because I'm being racist right now. I don't like them. But 2 pages ago, you were like, actually, you know what? I kind of like these group of people. And now all of a sudden, you're back to being racist about they can't marry your daughter. Like, it all felt very and then. That's the thing I just kept thinking about the whole time. Like this whole book
Okay.
feels very and then. And so I'm on the second book. I started that one, which is about Merlin himself. And that one, I hope more for it because the first book was from a third person perspective, but this next one is from a first person perspective. So
Okay.
I'm hoping that that gives it more drive because it's more, the internal characterization will give it more drive, but we'll see.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah, that was my week. Pretty standard. How about you? What's up with you?
Well, I, doing what I always do, which is a constant evaluation and reevaluation of, my health and health goals and stuff like that. So continuing to work on things like that, trying to figure out, next moves for the new year and what I want to focus on, and that's going okay. But in like, I guess entertaining myself news, like, I'd already got the book Baldwin, which actually is right here on my desk, one of many I'm trying to get through, and I'm also realizing my desk is a mess. I need to like really clean up. I've got so much stuff here, but trying to get through that. Obviously, we've completed the autobiography. Also, was going to order the Three Musketeers
Mm,
because I have a copy, but it's like really not in great shape. I've had it for a good number of years, and I was just looking at it. It's like it's really old, and while I like old books, there it's to the point where now it's old enough. This is just one that you look at. You don't open it often, you know. So I
sure.
need to get a new copy so I can handle that. Also, I've been watching a show called Criminal Minds,
Mm.
which this show it's the show is like new and old. There's like new episodes now, but I
But it's
guess
been
they
around
took
for a
like a
long time.
yeah, and like they took like a break. There's a weird like I don't know, I almost want to say like a 5 year gap from when the show originally started running, and so it had like I think 13 seasons before this break that I'm talking about, and I knew that it had been on. I think I'd seen like one or two episodes here and there in the years that it had run, but I never actually sat down and watched anything for a full length. So I decided
Uh-huh.
to go ahead and start that because, as you know, I've got a thing about shows that run for a really long time that I, you know, only find out about so much later. I started watching that. It's a really good, compelling show. A lot of great things with all of the characters. Really, there are some that I like more than others, but I don't really find any fault yet with any of the characters. So far, I'm in season um, 4 or 5, I think, and I already have some favorite characters. I
Uh-huh.
did do some looking ahead and saw that certain characters that are my favorites have left the show, and there were some issues with them.
Right.
Like for example, their leader, his name is Aaron Hotchner. Um, the actor who plays him got into some trouble. Apparently, he like fought someone or did something. He assaulted someone, is what they were calling it, and
Ooh.
it caused them to write him out of the show. So I'm kind of looking forward to how they end his character because whenever stuff like that behind the scenes happen, there's always this. Um, like the way they treat the characters' exits can often be um, less than what the character deserved because they were trying to get the actor to exit quickly.
Right.
But since this character is an integral part of the show and is on like all the seasons up until they leave in like season 11 or 12, whenever that is, I'm just wanting to see how they play out the characters leaving.
Right.
And then, of course, like I said, they take this break, and the show's off the air for like 4 or 5 years. I think maybe a little bit longer. I don't think much longer than 5 years, but it's now back. It's on Paramount Plus. Most of the main cast has returned, but from what I understand, the character Aaron Hodgner is not back. So that's kind of one of the things that's got me wanting to watch it. I'm like, how do you? Why would you not bring the character back or the actor back or anything like that? And so I'm interested in how the series itself develops. So I'm looking forward to continuing that run and getting into all that. But than that, like I really just haven't had time to do much of anything else, which it kind of is upsetting because I've been trying to get back into writing again. I want to not just for leisure, like I really want to start trying to get completed short stories out
Right.
and posting them, publishing them, whatever you want to call it. And I've got several that I had been working on, but for some reason I just haven't found the time, the drive, the interest, whatever you want to call it, to actually go back and continue the work on them or finish
Mm.
them. And that's been bugging me a little bit. So it's just like I'm gonna have to put something on hold for a while so that I can return to those. I just don't know what it is because I've really been enjoying the books that we've been reading. I've been looking forward to doing not only the Count of Monte Cristo, but now
Mm.
also the Three Musketeers.
Mm.
Getting into the Baldwin book, we've already got the biography to do. Like, there's so many,
Mhm.
and so I'm just like, man, like I don't know, something's got to give somewhere. So maybe I'll have to like give up my show watching for a while so I can get those hours back
Yeah.
to read again. So we'll see. Um, but yeah, other than that, the New Year's went well. We're, full steam ahead here. Kiddo starts school back on the 6th. So, yeah, we're good. But we're not here to talk about all that. We are here to talk about Star Trek Nemesis,
Mhm.
and really just ready to get right into it. So, this is the movie that a lot of people say killed the franchise, killed the movie franchise, I should say. It was the final movie featuring the Next Generation cast and crew, of course. And while there are some great elements in it, there are, in my opinion, a lot of misfires. But as a person who's watched the movie several times, we can go into all that a little bit later. But first, David, as a first time viewer of the movie, what did you think?
Yeah, I liked it. I can see where there's some issues with the storytelling, in the sense of, well, I'll put it this way. This feels like a TV movie, TV Star Trek movie. What I mean by that is that I feel like movies usually require a certain level of finesse, certain level of storytelling, and a TV show can get away with being a little slower, being a little, especially Star Trek. It can get away with being more mumbo jumbo. It could get away with being more casual. This episode feels like a blend of that. It feels
Mhm.
very Star Trek TNG, in my opinion. You got the cast, including Worf, all back. It's set on a different ship, of course, because ever since, I guess, First Contact, we've been on the. Is this the E or what's this? The Enterprise?
Yeah,
Okay.
the Sovereign class Enterprise E. Mhm.
Okay. So yeah, it's a different ship than the show had, but it's still the same crew. Um, I mean, let me put it this way: First Contact, and what's the other one? There was First Contact, and then what? Um,
Generations was the first Next Generation Trek movie. Then you had
right.
First Contact. Then you had Insurrection, and then you have this one.
Okay, so Insurrection was the one, that's right, that felt very it also felt very showy, like a lot, like kind of returned to the form for the show, but I feel like that one had more plot holes, and I didn't care for that one as much. I liked this
Mhm.
more because it felt more action packed. It's on the ship. Like Insurrection like had whole sections where they're on the planet like trying
So,
to.
here's what I will say about that, and I've thought about this a lot over the years, especially in watching all those movies from Generations to Insurrection. The key problem that people have is that when you move from the small screen, which is television, to the big screen, which is obviously major motion pictures, um, everything needs to be different. And so when people go into a Star Trek, in particular into these movies, they were expecting a lot of the same from the show, but not realizing you needed a different element to make a movie. And I
Right.
think that's why Next Generations, their first movie, Generations, I think that's why that movie had so many issues because what they really did there was they took the beginnings of a script from the TV show and
Right.
tried to blow it up and make it a movie, and they just couldn't. It just wasn't there. The format wasn't there, and they also thought that they would be saving themselves by reusing and retooling some of the sets and stuff. But again, you're shooting a movie. Things look different, things sound different. That's why if you go back and watch Generations, you'll notice there's a lot of errors, not just with the way that the costumes fit, because there are a lot of those, but
Mhm.
also if you look at like the lighting and stuff like that, because they really did just kind of took the set and moved it to another area so they could get all the equipment in they needed for the movies, which was different. And so
Mm.
like lighting is wrong, spacing is wrong. There are echoes where there shouldn't be echoes because the stage is different. Everything was different, and they didn't cover it up. And I guess they figured that no one would really notice. But now, especially now with remastering and the way that you can digitally access everything and enhance things and so forth, a lot of those things are glaringly obvious.
Right.
This movie, Insurrection, I also feel like suffers the same. Someone thought that they could just take a couple of elements from a TV script and plug it in and make a TNG movie. The movie has its successes, don't get me wrong, but it just wasn't there. And even if you drop in great performances from like F. Murray Abraham and Patrick Stewart and so forth, you still have a lot of issues if all you're doing is trying to blow up a television script.
Right.
And then here comes Nemesis. I feel like Nemesis is very much this problem. These
Oh
were
yeah.
ideas, they kind of went back and they were trying to recapture that element of next gen, but instead of evolving the characters and moving them forward in their own timeline, because again, they're older. They
Hmm.
tried to play us off on a story of something very reminiscent of the almost a rip on Kirk and Khan. Not quite there. They didn't really sell us on that.
Okay.
And like the reasoning behind how, like, the main villain here, Shinzon and Picard have an issue with each other. They didn't really flesh that out enough in the movie, which was funny because they were relying on the Romulans as a backdrop, and the Romulans would have been a great enemy. We've
Yeah.
heard about them throughout the entire run of Star Trek, not just
Right.
Next Generation, but of Star Trek, and for them to really put them so far forward only to make them suddenly a backdrop, because we knew almost nothing of these Remans that are all of a sudden
Yeah.
the new threat.
Right.
That also throws people off. So out of all of the movies, I always felt like First Contact was the greatest success because it gave you everything. It was you had a known enemy. You also got to see that enemy being bigger and badder and more threatening than you ever have before. You touched on the lore. We got introduced to just a couple of new characters. You weren't overwhelmed with new characters. And you got to see your favorites doing things, everything from being, fulfilling the roles that we know them as, but also getting to relax a little bit and be funny in some instances, so a good amount of levity mixed in with all the adventure and danger. But yeah, it's like they forgot all that when Nemesis came along and decided to do this thing. So yeah.
Well, I like how it starts. I like the levity that Picard has at the beginning when he's the best man at the wedding of
Hmm.
Deanna Troy and Will Riker. Which, I mean, finally, those two are finally married. Thank goodness. All
Yeah,
right,
right. You
Crusher,
guys
where
are
you
like
at now?
60, right?
Yeah, seriously. But I love Picard's speech. He's giving them a hard time about um I even forget what he says now at the moment, but
He tells Data to shut up.
yeah, he tells
And then
Data to
he
shut
says,
up and
15 years, I've been waiting to say that, which
15 years. I was gonna say, yeah.
if you do the math, when this movie came out, all the way back to when the first season of Next Gen aired, it's 15 years.
That's amazing. That's
So yeah,
crazy.
so if you do the math, he's right.
Wow.
Um, I'm sure someone figured that out and was like, "Oh, yeah, this is a nod to that first time him." Like 'cause there's a scene in the first season where Data kind of goes on one of those rants, and
Hmm.
Picard just cuts him off rather than telling him to shut up.
Right,
And
right,
now
right.
here he is, 15 years later, saying, "Shut up."
It was a little rude, but I was like, all
Yeah,
right, I get it. I get it.
yeah,
And Data doesn't get offended, so it's okay. But yeah, that was fun. I liked the opening kind of moment where the device goes off and it kills the Romulans in a pretty graphic way. They turn to stone basically. But unfortunately, the woman who sets it off is never a character ever again. She's only
yeah.
ever in
You
the
never see her
background.
again. You
She's
never
only
see
in the
her again.
background of one other scene, but it's other characters that are being talked about and talking to. Like she was a senator. She was the one who planted this bomb or this device, and she's no longer, anyway. There are other issues. I mean, like Deanna Troy, or sorry, the Viceroy character to what's
Shinzon.
Shinzon. I mean, he goes from apparently being the guy who saved Shinzon in the mines to somehow having telepathic powers. He's the second in command. He's like a doctor in his own right.
So
Like he's
so these are some of those plot holes that we never get explanations for. Like I said, we know nothing of the Remans. Now there have been references to the planets Romulus and Remus before, but
Mhm.
unless you are deep into the lore and the beta canon of Star Trek, and in particular the Romulans, you would have no way of knowing who the Remans are or what they're about or why they look like they do or any of that stuff.
My biggest
Um,
problem with the Remans is the way they look, because if they're supposed to be a Romulan offshoot, they look alien compared to the very
and there
humanoid Romulans.
and there is a reason for that. So, just to give everyone a quick rundown on the lore, yes, as we know, the Romulans are an offshoot of the Vulcans. A long, long, long time ago, the Vulcans, at the height of their, emotional, we're going to destroy everything, right before the time of Surak, there were a bunch of Vulcans who left the planet. They got on ships and they took off. They were just like, we can't deal with this
Right.
anymore. We're going to go find our own place. Now, there were several groups that did this. A lot of groups died. A lot of groups found other planets and kind of just maintained the status quo. But there was a group that landed on these twin planets here.
Right.
And the smaller planet was denoted as Remus. Now, Remus is a tidally locked planet. One side always faces the sun, the other side is forever in darkness. So there is
Hmm.
a thin band where there is atmosphere and you can survive. So now the original lore story goes that when the Romulans, when the Vulcans landed on Romulus, Romulus is a very fertile, uh, lush green planet. It's got a lot of life, a lot of stuff that could make you, comfortable, but it has very little mineral
Mineral.
deposits.
Hmm.
Now, they give you a whole explanation in the book that basically, in the formation of these two planets, most of the minerals coalesced into Remus. So Remus is
Right.
mineral dense, but lacking in any of the lush greenery or whatever else. So these proto Vulcan, proto Romulans sent a group to Remus to start setting up mining facilities. And
Hmm.
the original plot, or the original statement anyway, was that they would people would trade off. So like every 6 months or whatever their timeline was, basically half the year you would spend on Remus in the mines, sending that stuff back to Romulus so it can be developed, and then you would switch over. Okay.
Right.
Well, as with anything, of course, once people got there and started setting things up, they realized it was a very, very rough and dangerous environment. And after maybe a couple of rotations, people were like, you know what, I really don't want to do that anymore. And so they started to restrict the exchange. And suddenly you were on Remus far longer than you were ever on Romulus. Until
Hmm.
eventually they stopped doing the exchange altogether. And it was kind of like, if you want to survive at all, because we have all your food sources, you will stay, you will mine, and we will feed you. And
Right.
they eventually became a slave class. Now,
Right.
again, very harsh environment. The environment over time, plus the minerals, which a lot of them were highly toxic, got into the bloodstream, got into the DNA, and started over time to slowly mutate these people. And so that's why the Remans look the way that they do. But also, there are some interesting side effects. They developed greater abilities. Now, as we know, Vulcans already have some telekinetic abilities. The
Right.
Remans took that into the extreme through
Right.
the enhancement of their DNA, or the augmentation of their DNA and so forth. They were able to really, push those skills to like next level stuff. Meanwhile, the Romulans, who basically became like, bloated and fat basically, and they never really practiced anything, they lost their ability to do any of this telepathic stuff. So that's why you have these two groups that are set up the way that they are. And that's why the Remans hate the Romulans so much, because it was basically like, You didn't go to prison anymore. You went to Remus. And
Right.
so that's why in the movie we see, like Shinzon says, he calls himself Reman. Anybody who is raised on Remus, who goes to Remus, you become Reman because once you're there, in theory, you're never gonna leave.
Yeah.
That's
I
it.
love how this just real quickly. I love how this plot line feels very much like the Expanse Earth and Mars plot line. I
Yeah.
mean, Mars is not a slave colony, but they are very much abused by the Earthers in the we have the food, give us what
Mhm.
we want.
Well, and if you think about it, it's like that's why the belt is treated so bad because
Yeah.
Earth realized how much they failed in maintaining their control over Mars, and Mars also, like the Remans, secretly built up their military and then became a source of contention of power.
Right.
And Earth basically said, "Well, we'll never let that happen again." And so when the Belters got out there and in the asteroid belt, they were like, "Oh yeah, no, you will 100% depend on us."
Right.
So yeah, this is very similar. And then of course now we see the evolution here in this movie with um, Shinzon and the other Remans. But again, they don't give us any of that backstory in this movie whatsoever. We are just really now for the first time seeing Remans,
Mhm.
and for us to again have known so much about the Romulans through from the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, we never got to see this kind of development with the Remans. So for them to suddenly show up as these bat-like looking demon creatures
Yeah.
was a lot. Was a lot
Yeah,
to
it was
take.
too much. They could have been subtle about it. Make their skin like green, but they still have the overall look of a Romulan or something.
Hmm.
Um, guess what I'm getting at by saying I like the movie. First off, I had a low opinion going in because I knew it was considered a bad film, the one that killed off the franchise. So
Hmm.
I came in with low expectations, but that meant that I got to enjoy the things that I did enjoy. Like I don't know, I've always loved Tom Hardy as an actor. I know this is the first big film bit he had, so
Hmm.
I'm like rooting for him the whole time. It's funny. I was looking at his his filmography here, and one of his first things he ever did was in Band of Brothers, and I love him in Band of Brothers. Or I shouldn't say I love him. I recognize him very much in Band of Brothers because he has a very unique. His lips are very full, I'll say, very pouty, and you know, Patrick Stewart's lips are not. So it's one of those idiosyncrasies about like,
Yeah,
hey, I'm your clone.
I'm your clone. I'm the younger you. Yeah, and it's just like we're just gonna shave your head, and
Yeah.
we'll
That
we'll also make the explanation that it's also because he was beaten a lot, and so his
yeah.
bones were fractured and restructured several times. So they don't look quite alike, but there's enough there that you can. And then they show us a very fuzzy picture of
Him as the at the
young
academy.
bald
Yeah.
Academy, which
Yeah, young
also
bald.
doesn't
That's the
also
funny
doesn't make
part.
sense
Yeah,
because we know from Next Generation that in his youth, Picard had hair.
yeah.
He had hair for several years. He didn't
Yeah.
start losing his hair until, if anything, you want to say maybe his mid 40s. He
Right.
didn't start losing his hair. So for them to show him in cadet uniform and bald
Yeah.
made no sense. So
Right.
whatever. Um, yeah, lots of inconsistencies. So to talk about other issues that this movie had, and this is one that I've personally agreed with, the director. I think that the director was a mistake. This movie was directed by Stuart Baird, who did like the U.S. Marshals movies. So you remember, The Fugitive. There were a
Mhm.
few movies that came after The Fugitive that he directed as well.
Right.
He's known more for that kind of action adventure flick than anything else,
Mhm.
and if you look him up, and especially in relation to this particular movie, you will know that a few people like LeVar Burton and Marina Sirtis objected to him being the director because not only did he not know anything about any Star Trek, but apparently he refused to watch any Next Generation.
Yeah.
So he just kind of came into it. He had a script. He formulated an idea that he wanted to film, and he didn't look at any source material whatsoever, refused to do so, and just kind of presented a movie. Now, I have a big problem with people who do stuff like that because when you are coming into such a well-known franchise, it's like the very least you can do is review the source material. You should know it. And as we've seen time and time again, when you have writers, directors, producers, and so forth who don't know the source material, almost always those projects flop.
Yeah.
Looking at you, Witcher. Looking at you, Halo. Okay, like it just you can name several
Yeah.
more, but when you
Disdain
don't
for the
pay
source
attention,
material is, yeah.
yes, when you decide, nah, I'm not gonna do that. Oh, looking at you, final season of Game of Thrones. When you just kind of do your own thing and you're just like, we're not gonna pay attention to any of this, almost every single time it flops. And this
Right.
movie is no exception.
I'm looking at Stuart Baird's directing. He only directed these 3 films. He directed this one, and that was it. He was more
Yeah,
of an
this was his
editor.
last. This was his last. He was more of an editor. He did
Uh-huh.
some writing. He got into some music production as well, but he had never fully directed. And or he never continued to direct.
Right.
Yeah, and it's just like with all of the things that he was known for, it was clear to me that directing should have been the last of them, and he shouldn't have taken this project. If anything, this should have gone to Jonathan Frakes, who has
Right.
proven that he can, direct Trek very well, and that they all work well with him as the director. He should have done this film as well.
Uh-huh. It's curious that they chose to do that. Do you know why they chose to bring in this fresh blood,
So
is what I'm seeing here on
yeah, so
Wikipedia?
that was the whole thing, was mainly that they wanted fresh blood, which is funny because this was the, what did I say, fourth movie, fifth movie with this cast. And again, they're all older, they're all in their 60s, or in the case of Patrick Stewart, we're in their, 60s, 70s around
Uh-huh.
then, you know. Yeah, because Patrick Stewart's almost 90 now. So yeah, I mean, uh I don't know why they didn't lean into what they did with the original series crew, which is they still gave them movies that were on that action adventure scale, but they took into consideration the fact that these actors were older
Right.
and still, doing these things. And they wrote in stuff that was like, you can still do it, but it's going to cost you, you know, um, and played that off very well. They didn't do any of that here. And I don't think that they were really thinking of this as a movie that was going to kill the franchise. I think that this was supposed to be something that was going to allow them to kind of do like a soft relaunch of some of the movie things. Like we see at the end of this movie, the Enterprise is in space dock being repaired. There's mentions now of new crew members coming on board to take the place of those that we have lost. Riker gets a promotion, Data's dead, stuff like that. And there's a potential there for there to be something else.
Right.
But, nothing ever came of it. Once this movie was out and it did so horrible, they mothballed movies. And then that's when we took our 10-year break, and then all of a sudden it was the age of the prequel. And we've seemed to be stuck in the age of the prequel. No one wants to advance the Trek timeline. It's like they're afraid of it.
As I said last week, I have a theory why.
Yeah, yeah.
What are you gonna do about the Cisco?
So let's talk now, because we'll kind of go back and forth about mistakes and whatever else. So let's talk good things. You said that you enjoyed the movie. What was kind of like your, like, I guess, favorite moment? Yeah, we'll go there.
Well, I guess I'll just go from the beginning and just kind of work my way through it. So I like the wedding sequence because Picard is being jocular. He's in a good mood. Like if you pay attention to Picard's tone, his mood throughout the film, he goes from being very jocular. He's having a good time. It's the wedding. They're off to the second ceremony on Beta Z, and he's giving Worf a hard time because apparently on Beta Z you got to be naked for the ceremony. Like, okay, all right. If the Ferengi can do it, then the Beta Z folks will do it too. But Anyway, that was all fun. I liked the opening sequence. They did a good job with the opening sequence with the senators dying. I thought they were kind of dumb when they were like, "Oh, look at this pretty device going off. Isn't it a nice little light show it's giving us?" Like, honestly, that light show was a bit much in terms of how pretty it was. But I liked how like they died. Like it's a slow, painful, terrible death.
So on that light show, really quick, I always thought, because I thought the same thing initially the first time I watched it. I was like, y'all are staring at that thing way too intently. But when I thought about it, I was like, it makes perfect sense, because if the thing had just like blown up or whatever, right? It it doesn't do it. It tells us too much right away. But if it's this ornate, very pretty, and everybody's watching the light display, it's kind of like what we do anyway, right? Whenever bright lights and stuff come on, people tend to stop and look around, and you're appreciating the lights. And I was like, and I thought about it, I was like, that's a great way to get people, because no one runs, no one freaks out. We're all just, oh, it's so beautiful. Meanwhile, you're all being poisoned,
I
you
just
know?
don't think the Romulans are the sort to like appreciate beauty in a random fashion like
No,
that.
but they would be the type but they would be the type to invent a device that they would want to make sure the maximum number of people they were targeting were affected. And
Yeah,
what better
Romulans are
way than
also
to
the sort that don't easily freak out either. So I can see that maybe being the explanation.
No,
Go
but
find a
they're
security
very
person to
good.
clear this thing out of
Yeah,
here.
but they're
Yeah.
very good at assessing threats and getting
Yeah,
out of
that's
the
what
way
I
of a
think
threat.
is
And
that's what I
so
really think
and
is
so
happening.
it's like, this didn't come off as a threat right away. And even the guy, like, once it was over, everybody was very confused. Whereas if like it had exploded, or if it had just shot one person or something like that, everybody would have immediately been like, this is a threat. Talora is responsible. Like, they were even still questioning. They were like, get Senator Talora back in here, because they were wanting to know more, like, what was this? They didn't have anything to go on yet. Nothing was clear to them that this was a danger. And by the
Right.
time they figured it out, everybody was dead. Like, you'd all been poisoned. There was no going anywhere.
Right. Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Um One thing that was dumb throughout the entire movie is that every single villain can't shoot for not a single enemy ever hit a damn thing.
Oh
Whether
yeah.
they were on that little
They suffered from stormtrooper syndrome.
oh my god, the stormtroopers would be ashamed of how badly these guys shot. I mean, Picard was literally dual wielding a rifle and a pistol in a hallway while Data was opening a door and taking his sweet time about it. I mean, I get it. I mean, let's be realistic. How would he know to like what to put in the first time? I would think the thing would have kicked him off after 3 failed attempts, but it kept letting him try. But anyway, Picard was dual wielding and he annihilated an entire hallway worth of these baddies who are supposed to be shock troopers. They're supposed to be good at their job. Anyway,
Plot armor is the best armor.
and this is right
Plot
after the
armor is the
sequence
best
where
armor.
this is after that opening, one of the earlier sequences where they go to the planet to find B4, which I thought that was supposed to be Lore at first. Is Lore like completely dead? I forget what his fate was.
Lore is. I think by this time he was just missing. So, because I know that the last time that we saw Lore on screen, yeah, he beamed away. Like, we don't really know what happened to Lore at that point. So he was just missing.
Okay. Well, I thought that was Lore at first. And so
Yeah.
I was surprised by the plot twist that he was a plant by what's his face? Shinzon.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I mean, don't get me wrong. It was if you accept that he somehow was an android that they were going to have beamed back to the ship and give them, detailed information, and that's fine. It was just curious. That's an and then plot point. Like, there is no evidence ever at any point for why Shinzon should have B4. Like, how did he find him? How would they know that the Picard would go find him?
They partially explain it, and it's basically that they had uncovered B4 quite by accident.
Okay.
And once they realized what B4 was, Shinzon knew that by activating him, Picard would come for him. Because again, Shinzon has studied Picard.
Right.
Once he found out who Picard was and that he was Picard's clone and so forth, he studied everything about him. So he knows all about his connection to Data and how he feels about androids. And yeah, he knew that it would be the impossible to resist lure for Picard. And he was right. As soon as they pick up the signal, Picard is more than eager to go
Go
right
find
to
him.
the edge of the neutral zone to find him.
Right.
Um, so yeah, then they modified B4 to be kind of their, dumb servant,
Right.
and do things. Yeah.
Right. Like I don't mind all that. Like I actually loved the twist where it turns out, they had figured out what was going on and it wasn't before, it was actually Data that frees Picard on the ship when
Hmm.
he's first captured. They didn't like they didn't know what B4's purpose was, but they knew that he had been used to do something, so they used Data as a decoy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Data figures it out. Data figure like if I remember correctly, Data finds the secondary port that they had installed on him
Right.
because it wasn't Zoom
Necessary.
technology.
It was
Right. It
yeah.
was clearly a Romulan a Riemann modification.
Right.
And so he was able to determine that while not for sure what B4 was up to, they could reasonably assume what he was up to. And so it was just like, we're just not gonna activate you. I'm gonna take your place
Right.
and we'll figure this out. We'll get Picard and so forth.
Right.
Yeah.
Um now so I will say the plot does have some problems in the sense of why does he care to destroy the Federation so much? I mean, it's the Romulans who hurt him, and he does hate them, but like the whole idea that he's going to go to Earth and set off this super weapon, which I don't mind the super weapon. Let's say that we've had indications that there's a certain type of radiation that is super deadly, so we banned any study of it, and we don't ourselves know it, but when they revealed themselves in their ship, we noticed this strange radiation, which points to
Hmm.
this weapon. That's all fine. And if that's the weapon they use to kill the Senate, that's all fine. But at the end, when we're chasing down Picard because we need his blood, like all that's fine. Like I liked the whole I'm your clone and
Hmm.
you would be me if you were in my position. Like all of those are great questions. Picard is questioning himself and all that.
Yeah.
Um, there was when they first had him be like, "Oh, I want us to have peace," and Picard's like, "I wish I could trust you." At that moment, like he hadn't really done anything to not deserve trust, other than just be creepy in the first
So
scene.
this is again something that is not explained well, which is why the movie struggles. But basically, what we should have learned was that Shinzon had originally been indoctrinated to basically love all things Romulan.
Mhm.
And as much as we've seen the Romulans in the past, we know that the Romulan state and by extension the Romulan people are very, very pro Romulan. Think Sela, who
Right,
was Tasha Yar's half Romulan daughter, and how she was very much, the Federation is a threat and a danger to everything Romulans hold dear.
right,
That's basically take that mindset and give it to Shinzon. And then a lot of this will make much more sense. He was trying to figure out a way to break the Federation and do what no Romulan had ever done. And this was all in a way to prove that Remans were superior because again, he had been shunned, exiled by the Romulans and accepted and adopted by the Remans. So if a Reman was to do the one thing that the Romulans could never do, which is bring the Federation to its knees, then he would be the ultimate. And he would also outshine Picard because that's another part of his problem. He has become obsessed with Picard.
right,
Rather than making his own way in the universe and his own destiny and being his own man, he has he's convinced himself he's living in Picard's shadow, and
right,
that until not only is Picard eliminated, but also everything that Picard stands for erased, he'll always be compared to Picard. So
Right.
that's why it becomes a greater thing for him to erase the Federation and all that Picard is. But also, we find out nice plot armor there. You can't just kill Picard. You need to keep him alive because you need his blood
Yeah.
because you're a clone and you're dying.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I felt like that was a legitimate thing that they needed to do. Like, yes, he was designed to pre-age in order to reach the accurate age of actual Picard, and that would have negative biological consequences. And if they're gonna fix that, they have to get a hold of the
Well,
original.
so I always took that as it wasn't that they needed his blood to fix it. It's they never finished the process.
Yes,
Because as
right,
he says, he was supposed to be properly aged up to take over for Picard. But
right,
midway through the whole process, they decided we don't want to do this anymore. So they stopped administering the necessary treatments to him. And he was just
right,
a kid who was now forced to grow up normally. But
right.
he was not that he didn't have a natural development in the first place, so there was no growing up normally for him, and that's why he was dying.
Right. Well, one thing that would have been really cool, would have been hard to do, maybe impossible, but if what they had been doing the whole time was not so much that his head gets these bluish black veins appearing all over his face, but he slowly morphed into Patrick Stewart over the course of the film. And by the last scene, he was actually fighting himself on some level. That would have
Like
actually
a
been pretty
like a
cool.
weird, diseased, bizarro Picard looking.
Yeah, with his very feminine, strange outfit. That might be one thing people complain about too. Do people hate his outfit he's wearing? He looks very androgynous. I'll say that.
Well, I don't think there was much in the way of complaints about the outfit. I think that there were. I know there were complaints about like the way that some scenes were cut, which would have lent more to the complex and menacing nature of Shinzon. You can
Uh-huh.
find some of those scenes on YouTube. They're interesting to watch, but I always get distracted by that because they're not finished. So when you see a character and they're like walking past a view screen or whatever, instead of seeing like the star backdrop, you see the giant green screen where the stars are going to be.
Right.
Or they walk a little too far out of frame, and then the wall cuts and it's all the soundstage stuff right there because they walk too far. I always get distracted by those things. But I mean, again, Tom Hardy is a pretty good actor, and even in this again early work, you could tell that he was trying to do the most, but they cut so much of it, it also limits how he's portrayed here. So, but no, I don't think
Right.
I've ever heard anybody say anything about his outfits.
Okay. I guess to really put a cherry on top then for why I did like it overall, even though now that I'm having a chance to think about it, there's a lot of things to nitpick about. The final like battle sequence felt, I think I liked it. I liked that the Enterprise was outclassed in part because this ship was just so designed to be a battleship. The Enterprise is it's a Galaxy class, but they've made sure that it's not like the whole point of the Defiant was that it was supposed to be a warship that was small and compact and fast and all that. But if you went the other direction, like these Remans did, of like making it big and have just weapon upon weapon upon weapon, then you can see how this ship might come to be. And so you can see how the Enterprise would suffer trying to fight against it. And then you have the Romulans show up and try and help, and they get destroyed. So I just that whole sequence of them trying to figure out where it was because it was cloaked, like that was a fun little moment. So
Mhm.
that whole like final, like the whole battle essence there. This is a dire situation. Um, Again, the whole bit of like we want to go to Earth and destroy it, that seemed a bit much, but you can see how well they have a planet destroying weapon on hand, so we have to stop them somehow. But again, that I'll put it this way: if I were writing the story, I would have turned it around. I would have said that they were actually on the way to Romulus. Like, let's say the plot had started somewhere else, and Romulus was the final destination. We're going to kill the people who have been, abusing us for so long. That would have actually been a more compelling, Final Destination, because if the Romulans show up and there's like, hey, Picard, thanks for like helping us, we got it from here, and then they get destroyed and the Enterprise is still the final ship left standing to save the Romulans of all people. I mean, that's supposed to be what got the Klingons to finally respect the Federation, is when they stood up at what is that battle?
Kittimer.
Kittimer, yeah. So like they have a Kittimer situation on their hands. That
Oh,
would have been a
yes.
more compelling why, like, where we're going with this super weapon moment. Let's see. And of course, the big final moment is Data sacrificing himself. I don't know. I felt it was earned. I mean, you had that moment where he jumps out of the ship toward Picard. It seems silly if in retrospect that he only had one transporter jump thing in his arm when he might conceivably have fit a second one, or why not two, basically. But in the sense that we only have one, and whoever destroys this thing can't get away from it. If you shoot it, it blows up immediately and you can't run away from that. Data did download his consciousness into before, so of course he's an android. He can download himself into another body, so he's not truly lost in that sense. So yeah, I don't know. I felt like this movie was trying. Again,
Oh, it definitely does try.
it feels
Um,
it feels like an episode, a 2 hour long episode is what I'm getting at.
yeah,
And if I'm just thinking of it as a 2 hour long Star Trek episode, I think it's fine. Now, does it reach the levels of what a movie should be? No,
no,
there are issues. But
it definitely doesn't.
if it's just a TV episode, then it's fine. So that's where I guess I fall on it, the whole thing.
Which is a perfectly fair assessment, and that's why I think this movie does get the criticism, because when you're going to the movies, you are expecting bigger. You're expecting there's a heightened level of
Quality.
engagement, quality, all of it, and it's just not there for large portions of this movie. And it's they give us a lot of interesting things, like the scene down on the planet Kalaris 3, and they're on the Argo, that little dune buggy looking thing. That was a lot of fun and interesting, and watching Picard speed around while Worf is shooting the cannon out the back, you know. Um, but yeah, it's just like the story itself,
Uh-huh.
it just wasn't enough. There wasn't enough development. There were too many things that we didn't have that would have allowed us to really be immersed in the world. Like, again, pointing out the lack of Riemann storyline, pointing out why Shinzon is so obsessed with wiping out the Federation. You had to really kind of like stretch yourself on what you know of the lore and the characters, and then what little they do tell you in the movie, to make
Right.
your own connections. And this is again why I blame the director, Stuart Baird, because he even said that what he was trying to make was a movie that did not depend so much on the lore, that you could watch it and enjoy it. And that's a problem when your main audience are people who watched the whole show. Like, that's who's coming to see the fifth or sixth Star Trek movie. It's not new fans. It's the people who've been here with you for most of the ride, if not from the beginning, but for most of it. So you need to be able to feed into what they already know and expand upon it, not cut it out and make all these weird, take the story in weird directions and not give any explanations for it. You're expecting people to do too much of, well, your job. And that's why this movie to me falls flat,
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, like you pointed out, B4 is an obvious draw for Picard, but unless you know that Picard and Data have a unique relationship, and Picard's the one who helped define the rights of androids and all that, then them going there to check out the B4 thing doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Right.
Because, yeah, Data's a crew member on the Enterprise, but I mean, any ship can go and check out the Kalaris thing. You
Right.
guys are already booked on a prior engagement. You diverting to check this out makes no sense until you remember, oh, wait, yeah, Data's on the ship, so is Picard, so is Geordi, so is Beverly Crusher, like the four people who have like done the most with positronics and androids, but you wouldn't know that if you didn't have the background from the show.
Right.
Um, what else? Shinzon talking about Picard and how similar they are and how Picard grew up and the things that they went through and all that kind of stuff. A lot of those things were stuff that was alluded to in the show, but again, wouldn't know that. Didn't watch the show. So
Right.
it's like things like that's what I'm talking about, which take you out of it because it's making you have to make too many intuitive leaps when there was plenty of stuff that they could have just included to give
Right.
us an explanation and be done with it.
Right. They didn't have to lean so heavily on the show. They could have relied on telling a good story.
Yeah.
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 And and then you talked about, Data's issue or Data saving Picard at the end and the sacrifice. There is a throwaway line in there towards the end where they talk about trying to lock on to the captain and beam him aboard, but the Thaleron radiation generator is kicking back too much energy, so they're not able to lock on to him without the extra signal from the device.
Gotcha. Okay.
Should Data have brought two? Sure. But then the issue was that the device itself was active and was arming,
Well,
and there was
and
no way to stop it.
yeah, and I should be quick to point it. I should remember when they introduced the idea that he has this little chip, this little transporter. It's when they're revealing that he is not before, he's Data, and that was supposed to be basically his way to get off the ship because Picard, they didn't know that Picard was going to be kidnapped, and he was saying, hey, I have this device that Geordi gave me, you could use it, so I should go back. They actually did explain that the first time. Here, I just want to pause for a moment. I enjoy so much talking about this and nitpicking, but one thing I've noticed is that like there are channels on YouTube that also talk about movies and they nitpick, and Stranger Things is a perfect example. I enjoyed it. I wasn't nitpicking it while I was watching it, but the people who I did see complaining about it were nitpicking. But they're channels that like they are movie channels. They are channels that like that's kind of what they do is they're devoted to like critiquing shows. And I feel like that's the double-edged sword of you can suck the joy out of it too much sometimes if you're doing it too much. So
yeah, you absolutely can.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's necessarily what we're doing here because this movie was already labeled a flop long before we got here. But
Right.
I just like for us to be able to pick up on like our takes on why it failed,
Yeah.
because I mean there's a lot of different things here, and like you as a first time viewer, me as a long time fan, I feel like the things that we're going to pick up on as to why this is a problem will be different because I'm a person who, again, I know all of these things. I've watched the show multiple times. I've read a lot of the stuff that would have been supplementary material here that wouldn't have necessarily been included but would have been nice to know, and so
Right.
forth. Yeah, it's just I think the way that we do it is different than just being like, oh, I watched this movie one time and here's why it sucked.
Right.
So, um,
Yeah. It is
yeah,
I'll say it again. When I think back on the experience of this movie, other than the big action pieces, which make it like that's why it's a movie because of the big action pieces,
yeah,
the CGI, the plot is very much a TV episode plot, which is fine, but that does mean that when you make it this bigger thing, it doesn't quite reach there. And it just feel like I'm just thinking back on certain scenes, like the moment in the Senate where Shinzon is kind of throwing his weight around in that first time that he's there, and he gets that female commander to come to him, and she like tries to be, trying to seduce him kinda, and he says, if you touch me again, I'll kill you. And like, but the way that whole thing was filmed was TV. That was not filmed movie. When I think back on it, like that moment when he like, he's hurting and he like, and he like lurches over and she turns around, but she's already through the door. And then she like walks back to the door. Like They would
So
have seen her do that. They would have
yeah,
been like, "What the hell are you doing?" It should have been a subtle moment, not
yeah,
this. Yeah,
very
it's too much.
obvious. You can still see her silhouette. We can still make out the color of the clothes you're wearing in the
Yeah,
door,
yeah,
right? Not
right.
like what we're used to seeing, where if someone is spying on someone in a vulnerable moment, normally you just see like the faint silhouette in the darkness, or the classic one is the eyeball through the little
Yeah,
slit, you know,
right.
that
Yeah,
so that way you know someone's watching. We don't know who it is, but we know someone's watching. That's going to be revealed later. Um, Again, I'm going to blame Stuart Baird for a lot of this,
yeah,
because his his filming was very formulaic for a shorter action movie, not
uh-huh.
the the typically complex, drawn out stuff that we kind of expect from Trek. But also, that's kind of the way that movies were, the way movies were going back then. A lot of your major motion or major films and stuff of the era of the time were very much like this. It's kind of cut, clipped, long action sequences. There's a little bit of exposition, but we're really focused on the action. How cool does our character look flying through the air, or blowing something up, or waving a wand? Even I believe that when this movie came out, it was in competition with, there was a Harry Potter movie that was out. I think
Oh,
the
wow.
second,
Probably the first one.
yeah, the second Lord of the Rings, the Twin Towers with
Yeah,
the epic battle
yeah.
scene, was also out at the same time.
Oh, right.
So
Oh,
yeah, there was
yeah.
a
Oh,
lot
you're totally
riding
right.
on. Yeah, if I remember correctly, like a lot of these movies were like all in that vein, and they were trying to really, really get their hands on as much of that action adventure dollar as they could. But Star
Right.
Trek does not really work in that category. Yes, it can have action adventure sequences, but it should not make up the bulk of the movie. And in this one, unfortunately, that's what we get. Again, you've got the long scene of them on Kalaris 3 driving the Argo around, shooting at stuff and jumping over cliffs and whatever else. You've got the long battle scene in space where the scimitar is perfectly cloaked, and they're shooting phasers in every direction, and Romulan ships come in to help out, and there's all this. And then you've got the scenes on the ship itself where Riker and Worf and the Chancellor's viceroy, and all them people are hand to handing it. Picard's uh, blasting away with phasers and stuff. The Enterprise rams the scimitar, for
Yeah.
Pete's sakes. We got a lot of great action and
That's
technical shots,
yes.
but the story was wholly lacking.
Yeah. Well, again, I feel like there was potential there, but it's at the quality of a TV episode, but not a movie episode, not a movie
Yeah,
quality.
yeah.
So
They didn't have enough. They didn't have enough to really fill it out on the
yeah.
story end. And that again is because there were cuts that were made. Because again, like I said, there's a lot of these scenes that you can
Mm,
find on YouTube that would have filled
mm,
in the story. Not completely with it, but they would have filled it
better.
in
Yeah.
more. But then what we get are a lot of action sequences, a lot of cool shots of the new ships. I mean, they made a big deal out of how the Enterprise looked, and the warp trail that it makes when it goes to
Yeah.
warp. There's a big deal about the scimitar when it's revealed, and those wings unfurl, and the giant glowy green of the Thalaron
Right.
radiation. We got the inside of that, and we see the docking bay. We've got those little ships that are they're little own versions of fighters or whatever, that are darting around, and everything else. Like, there was so much of that it just, again, it's not a great Trek movie, because a great Trek movie is more story than action, not the other way around.
Right.
But I just don't think they didn't want to do story. They wanted action, because again, that's where the action adventure genre was at the time. And again, like I pointed out those movies before, all of them had great fight sequences in it. I mean, the Lord of the Rings, Twin Towers, the fight at
Oh,
the
I love
end
that
at
scene so
Helm's
much.
Deep, it's one of the greatest scenes from that era ever. It's still talked about to this day. It hasn't been eclipsed. There hasn't been a show since that's done it. I know they talked about it in comparison to, Game of Thrones, but then of course we couldn't see the infamous
Yeah.
fight on the Game of Thrones'
Right.
attempt, but it's still talked about. It's still reviewed. It's a wonderful scene. The Helm's Deep fight scene is a
Mhm.
great scene. It's also a very
Yeah.
long scene, but because it's
Mhm.
done well, it
Yeah.
works. So yeah, I just think that's the problem here with this movie. They just didn't execute all
Yeah.
those things well.
But I guess this does lead pretty well into Star Trek Picard, I guess. I remember you talking about it, just getting kind of hints that part of the plot is about androids are no longer welcome, and that must mean that Data wasn't around on some level, and so now I know why.
Well, yeah, so Data is not around. B4 is around. And so there's a series of comic books that follows
Okay.
after this. And it goes into, basically when Data tried to download himself into B4, it was largely unsuccessful for a
Okay.
while. But Geordi keeps working with them, and eventually they're able to recover Data. And Data basically blends with who B4 is. So he's not quite Data, he's not quite B4. And he kind of like, takes over from there. But then he uh like basically malfunctions, and so they send him to the Daystrom Institute where he's going to be studied by Bruce Maddox. So finally Bruce Maddox gets his hands on a Sung type
Mm,
android that he gets to study, and then through his study he's able to basically isolate what's Data and what's B4, and he creates these various engrams or whatever that separates it out. And Data is basically a wholly unique program that exists outside of all of these um like other programmers or
right.
whatever. Within like in Picard, when you finally get there, the Data program is doing some things that they have to reconcile later on. There's like another android that someone built who's got Data's memories on some regard, and yeah, there's just like a bunch of stuff there in that first season that they don't totally explain very well. But basically, it's trying to do right by Data's
Okay.
memory is what the first season's about. Second season is basically mirror universe, terrible hijinks. In my opinion, it can be totally skipped. And then you have the third season, which
Yeah.
is great, a lot of fun. Um, Lots of nostalgia, and should have been what the show was about from the beginning.
Well, let me
But
ask you this.
what
Is
do I know?
this now, does this now mean that I could watch Picard and I don't have to have watched anything else to, watch Picard?
Mm, oh, almost. I'd say 80%. And that's because Seven of Nine
Oh, yes.
is a part of
Right.
Star Trek Picard. And so if you don't know anything about her character arc
Then
at
you're
all,
missing
then
something. Yeah.
you'll yeah. Like she's still uh, a great character, but I think a lot. No, not even I think. I know that a lot of the connection that's made with her character is the fact that we saw her on
Gotcha.
Voyager and we got to know her through Voyager. So when she pops up again in Picard, you're kind of like I know I was when she first popped up. I was like, it's Seven,
Right.
like. But that's a recognition you only get because you've watched it and
Who she is.
the
Right. Right.
character. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I still have a little bit of ways to go before I get to that.
Yeah, like say, like even in this one, you watched Nemesis. Admiral Janeway has a
Yeah.
cameo in that. She's the one that orders Picard to go to Romulus. But so in this movie, she's Admiral Janeway. You haven't even watched her as
Right.
Captain Janeway yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, um, I almost told you not to watch this movie, but that cameo is so
Yeah.
small, it
Yeah.
doesn't really do anything. Yeah, I do love though. If anybody's interested, there is a video that you can watch. It's the behind the scenes shoot that they did for that scene of her and
Stuart.
uh, Patrick Stewart doing their scene, and it's so great because um, she's supposed to be sitting at her desk and she's got her hair in the bun and she's wearing the uniform and everything, and she's Admiral Janeway on the monitor and everything else. But if you watch the behind the scenes, she's like wearing the top of the uniform but she's standing. She's actually standing up. She's not
Right.
sitting down. She's standing up, and then like below, she's got like jeans, and there's just like nothing, like total green screen or whatever. And I was like, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, why would you come in and get all dressed when you don't have to, when they just need, really from like
Right.
chest up to film you? But I just like that they, for some reason, someone filmed them filming her, and so you can go and watch it, and it's just, yeah, she's jeans and some sneakers. She's ready to. She's already halfway out the door, man. She's gonna film this and go sit on the couch, cash her check real quick, and then go sit on the
Right.
couch. So overall, you said that you've enjoyed this movie. This was the final
Mhm.
movie in the TNG franchise. There are no more movies featuring this cast or any of the other casts. There's no Deep Space Nine movies. There's no Voyager movies. Nothing. This was it. Um, how do you feel now, having gone through all those, from Genesis all the way now to the end here with Nemesis? From Genesis to
Was the
Nemesis,
first one
what
called
do you think?
Genesis?
Generations.
Yeah,
Sorry,
TNG.
Generations.
Yeah, I still haven't watched the original series, but there's that funny little line from Weird Al. He does it's called eBay. It's supposed to be what I bought on eBay. It's supposed to be an NSYNC parody of NSYNC's I Wanted That Away. I got it on eBay, I think is the one. Or no, that's not it. No, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. It's the I'm So White and Nerdy. And one of the lines in there is, do I like Luke? Do I like Luke? Or do I like I have to dang it. What's the original captain? Kirk. Do I like Kirk? Do I like Picard? He has to pick between the two. So I've always thought about that line every time I watch anything, because Patrick Stewart as Picard is great. Like, he's the dad that you wish you had. He's the important, respectable, honorable, witty, authority figure that you wish you had in your life. And so the idea that this is the last time, well, not quite the last time, but one of the last times that Patrick Stewart picked up the role. I mean, 20 years later, he's now in his late 70s, right, 80s. He's not quite the same man he was. This is the last time we see him at his prime, I guess you could say.
Actually, that is correct. And I just want to say really quick, if you watch Patrick Stewart, like, this is the last time that you see him in like what I consider full command of like the voice and the persona and so forth. After this is when he starts doing all those X-Men movies, and in particular the movie Logan, where in that movie he plays Professor X, who's like 90, right? And having some kind of nervous break. Well, Patrick Stewart, for that role, since he's playing an ailing, sickly Charles Xavier, he lost a bunch of weight to play the role, and he did some stuff that ended up weakening his voice. So he never sounds the same. Like, he's obviously since gained the weight back and recovered and so forth, but he never sounds the same. Whatever he did, his voice never truly recovered. So this movie is the last time you hear him like that. Anything after that, you'll notice a distinct difference.
Okay, yeah, I bet. I remember that movie came out, and he definitely. I mean, he plays. I've always known Patrick Stewart before all this as Professor Xavier. That was the character I knew him best as. So seeing him here, I mean, the characters are so similar. It's easy why they picked him to cast him in that role.
Oh yeah. I think that whoever cast him as Charles Xavier probably grew up watching him as Patrick Stewart.
All right, sir, sit down, and we'll have you just act from a chair.
Yeah. Right.
Those
he probably didn't even have to audition for that role. Someone called him and said, "Look, you're Charles Xavier. We need you to show up." Right. Well, it's like, we need you to show up. Filming starts at 9:00, but I have an audition. Did you hear what I said? You're Charles Xavier.
Put on a suit.
9 a.m.
Yeah.
Be there. Right. We got your chair ready. Right. We got a chair ready for you. Come on.
So yeah, it's kind of sad then to think that this is the last time he's like fully the character in that sense. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I basically I need to sit down and watch the original series, even the animated series, I guess, just to be thorough about it, and then just see how it all compares. It's interesting that when they rebooted the movies with the Star Trek film that's supposed to be about the original cast, that in none of those movies that followed they ever reference. I mean, I guess those movies are all set in that timeline, so of course they won't reference TNG's storyline, but nothing from TNG ever comes up again until
But you're talking about the movies with
yeah, the J.J.
like
Abrams
Chris Pine
films.
and
Yeah.
well, so well, those movies wouldn't
Well, what
reference
I'm getting
next gen because they're
I
all
know, but what I'm
prequels.
getting at is that we've already seen Picard and Kirk interact in the Generations movie. So in the sense that they're
Mhm.
willing to find ways to get those casts to interact, like is there a
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is one thing that I feel like has been the great failing of Trek is that for all the movies they've done, they never did multiple crossover movies. Like Generations is the closest that we ever came, and the only characters that interact with each other are Kirk and
right?
Picard. That's it. There should have been a bunch of movies where Picard and Cisco have to finally truly resolve their
Yeah.
differences and the cast work together. See Data and
Yeah.
Jadzia doing things together and so forth. Or once Voyager finishes its run, um, yeah, the cast and crew like having to get together to solve some kind of problem and various members from DS9 and TNG together and do something. Like there should have been so many mixed
This
match
I
crossovers
mean,
or
this
whatever
movie
else.
itself could have
It's terrible
they
that it
could have
never
set
happened.
this movie on Deep Space Nine on some level. Like the start of
They could have given us a simple wink and a nod of at the end of the movie when Riker gets his promotion and goes off
the
to
Titan.
the Titan, that the new first officer is someone from
Yeah.
Voyager. And a character, I mean, we see the admiral that Janeway got a promotion when she got back. She's now an admiral. Well, promote the rest of them and make one of them the new first officer or the new operations officer because Data's gone
Well,
too.
actually, you say all
You know,
that, and
you've
I
got
remember at
seats
the
to fill.
beginning of this movie at the wedding scene, the fact that everyone, including Worf, was at the wedding, and and Worf when he's like bent over, and you're like, why is he bent over? Is he like crying or something? And he complains about Romulan ale, not about I wish my wife were here or anything. Like he doesn't.
Once again, the Worf hate, just like right, like oh, Worf made it all the way back to Deanna and Will's wedding, but none of you fools could show up for Worf's wedding on Deep
Right,
Space Nine.
right,
Get out of here. Yeah, you didn't. You weren't there for the funeral either, but this man is still here
yeah.
at your wedding. Come on, give me
Yeah,
some real
and all
world. Worf's not there because he's mad at
across
you.
all of that, they're giving him a hard time for not wanting to be naked at the next wedding. And Picard's like, "What you got to be
Right.
afraid of, big guy?"
I mean, okay, he came to the ship for the wedding, but now you're dragging him all the way to Beta Z to him have to watch even more of
Right.
your stuff. No, let him go back to Deep Space Nine. Care about him, like, yeah,
That
so
would have been an
much.
interesting moment if we had gotten to Beta Z because we could have seen like Waxana could have shown up. Waxana Troy could have been very much a part of that second ceremony.
Well, I know that in universe, by the wedding, she was still alive. However, um, Majel Barrett had already passed by this time.
Had she? I mean,
Yeah.
it says that she was still doing the voice of the computer in this movie, but
Well,
they could
she
have just
was
had
the computer.
recordings.
Yeah, the computer voice is recorded. I mean, she's already done enough. Like that was one of the last things that she did. Actually, was she recorded so much phonetic stuff that they can actually use her voice to this day, but they choose not to.
Right.
But yeah, that was one of those projects that she did that her voice could be used for
No,
computer
she died in
voiceover stuff.
2008. She wasn't dead yet.
I
This
thought she
came out
was.
in 2001.
I thought she had already passed.
Nah, I mean, she was obviously she would have been about age 69, almost 70, I guess, but because she died at age 76. So 7 years
Okay.
after this movie came out. Actually, she died on December 18th of 2008, and this movie came out on the 13th of December in 2002. So that's 6 years. So excuse me, she would have been 70, but still around to, I guess, do the voice if she would want it. I don't know.
Well, my
Yeah.
mistake.
But yeah, she still had 6 good years left after this movie came out. So but it's crazy to think back to the 2000s though. Like that was
it's 2026 and here we are. This movie came out, what'd you say, 2001? So yeah, 25 years ago.
Well, it actually came out in 2002, December 2002.
24 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean, just the 2000s in general, it's just an interesting time to think about.
Oh, those 2000s.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's going to really do it for us. We're going to finish this in almost our regular time.
Yeah.
It's become a regular time. So I will just say that, yes, next week we will finally be finishing up with all things DS9, at least for a while, before we return for any like retrospectives or whatever. We're going to do the autobiography of Benjamin Sisko. So you have one more week to read up and join us for that particular discussion. It does lean heavy on that episode, The Visitor. So go ahead and rewatch that one if you want. I think I'm actually planning on doing that as well. So there you go. New Trek stuff. So as we already said a couple weeks ago, they've already wrapped on filming for the final season of Strange New Worlds, even though we only have season 3 that's out. Season 4 is supposed to be released sometime soon. And then, of course, we have the Star Trek Starfleet Academy show, which is also on its way. So those are the only new things to look out for. If you were a Star Trek Discovery fan and you particularly like the actress who played Captain Michael Burnham, Sonequa Martin Green, you can find her on her new show, also on Paramount Plus. It's called Boston Blue, which is a spin-off of the Blue Bloods show. So she's on there. She plays a detective. I think the character's name is Lena Silver, Detective Lena Silver. So, yeah, just letting you know where you can find other Trek actors as they're still like doing things and everything else. So, but that's it. That's going to be all for us for now. If you, again, feel free to drop us any questions, comments, concerns that you have on any of our videos. We'll try to get to you as soon as we can. But other than that, take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.